What is happening, YouTube? Welcome back, guys, to another episode on Mob Talk UK. First of all, let me wish you all a very happy new year. I hope 2025 is going to be prosperous and enjoyable for every one of you, my loyal subscribers. So let's dive right into a brand new episode on Mob Talk UK. Today we're going to be talking about a gangster from Liverpool called George Bromley. George Bromley was only 33 years old when he was shot dead in November 1997. He was a known doorman boss in the Liverpool area, and he was gunned down while he was sat in a friend's home as he read the Daily Post newspaper, with Merseyside police still looking for his killer almost 30 years later. George Bromley was sitting in the kitchen of businessman and Underworld figure Charlie Seiga. He was sitting in Charlie's West Derby home on November the 18th, 1997, when a gunman made his way into the house and executed the 33-year-old George Bromley. Now, the brutal shooting of George, who was a dad of two, sparked a manhunt for the persons responsible, and this manhunt at the time, back in 1997, actually redefined the way that Liverpool was policed. Bromley was a prominent doorman in the city of Liverpool at the time of his death, and he actually earned himself the nickname The Enforcer among Liverpool's underworld. So I think it's safe for us to say that George Bromley wasn't just a nightclub doorman. He was, in fact, a well-known gangster amongst Liverpool's criminal fraternity back in the 90s. George was shot 3 times in the head by a masked assassin, with one neighbour telling the police the day after the killing, "I saw the body lying there. I've never seen so much blood in all my life. The man was lying on the floor, groaning, but there was nothing I could do." This neighbour went on to tell police, "Mr. Seiga said he opened the door to his house and a man shoved a gun in his face and marched him into the house before he shot his friend George in the head. He was devastated, but I really don't know why the man was shot." Liverpool detectives said at the time the shooting of George appeared to have been carried out in a professional and well-planned manner. George, a dad of two, was known to the police and was sentenced to 27 months in prison for violence back in 1991. Police said they did not have any idea about the motive behind the brutal killing. Police appealed for help from the public, and investigations into Mr. Bromley's business connections were launched. In the following days, police carried out a number of armed raids around the West Derby and Liverpool areas. A neighbour of George Bromley's spoke to the police on November the 22nd, 4 days after his murder, and said, "It really is like New York now. These people, these gangsters, really don't care about the ordinary, decent families of Liverpool." Now, George Bromley and Charlie Seiga were very good pals. They had a very close relationship. So close, in fact, that George would actually visit Charlie Seiga's house on the regular every Tuesday night for something to eat. George would normally call between 5 p.m. and 6 p.m. every week. And on this particular evening, the night that George was killed, he'd only been at Charlie Seiga's house 5 to 8 minutes before the assassin turned up and shot him dead in the kitchen of Charlie Seiga's house. So George Bromley's been in the house, he's reading a newspaper, he's relaxing, chatting with Charlie. He's been in a few minutes, the doorbell goes. Charlie goes to open the front door, he's met by a masked gunman. He marches into the house, goes straight to the kitchen where George is, and shoots him dead 3 times in the head. While this is going on, Charlie's made a bolt through the patio doors into his garden, and he's hiding in bushes. Now, to me personally, reading how these events unfolded from Charlie Seiga's police statements, his version of events, it sounds to me that Charlie Seiga actually had some sort of involvement in the setup of George Bromley. I could be right, I could be wrong. Read into it what you will, make your own minds up. But to me, it has always seemed a little bit suspicious when it comes to Charlie Seiga's involvement in George's death. A month after the shooting of George Bromley, the police actually charged Charlie Seiga, the man whose house it was, with Bromley's murder. 2 other men were also charged with the murder, but the charges were dropped before it actually went to trial. What preceded was a high-profile trial where, in October the following year, so 1998, Mr. Seiga was acquitted of murder. After Charlie Seiga was completely acquitted and exonerated of George's murder, he made a comment about how he thought that George's murder was actually a watershed moment for Liverpool's gangland and led to more violence across the city. He told reporters I think more people started thinking in terms of shooting people after Bromley. I think they saw that a big name could be shot dead and that people could get away with it. Within a few years, all the big crime bosses seemed to be trying to kill each other across Liverpool. Now, let's go back before the time of George Bromley's murder and talk about what kind of guy George Bromley actually was, what he was all about, and why somebody might hate him or fear him enough to want him dead. As well as working a number of nightclub doors, George was also a taxer of drug dealers. He used to tax local drug dealers of the profits and drugs, and this is where the nickname the Enforcer came about. One drug dealer he tied up and tortured for hours on end with a burning iron, melting skin from the guy's face and body until he gave up where his money and drugs were hidden. He was also involved in door wars with rival security firms over lucrative nightclub contracts across the city of Liverpool. In one incident, Bromley and his gang burst through the door of the flat of a rival doorman and beat him and stabbed him mercilessly. When the guy's pregnant girlfriend tried to intervene, she was then also set upon and viciously beaten, ending her losing a baby. It's fair to say that George Bromley was a vicious, nasty piece of work and an absolute menace on the Liverpool's club scene back in the 90s. George was known to knock around with Kevin Mad Dog Maguire and David Unge, members of Bromley's gang, both also very vicious Liverpool underworld figures at the time. Now, by 1997, George Bromley, then 33 years old, was still into the profession of taxing and robbing drug dealers. And his methods were very effective and horrible, to say the least. They involved torture, kidnapping, and even targeting members of drug dealers' families, which totally went against the old school criminal fraternity rule book of family members are completely off limits. So, but George Bromley didn't care for the old rule book of the criminal world. He totally went against all that and went to any means necessary to get what he wanted. Bromley, over the years, made himself a very long list of enemies. In one incident back in 1990, when George would have been just 26 years old, he was sat in a bar with a friend of his and fellow gang member when another man came into the bar and shot him in the leg. Bromley survived, and he went against the old school rule book in this situation by talking to the police, and he actually gave a statement. George actually told police that the shooter was Jimmy Callahan, a rival Liverpool gangster on the club scene. But when the case actually reached court, Bromley decided to withdraw his statement and the case collapsed. George decided to get his own special brand of justice and revenge on Jimmy Callahan. A few months after this incident, after the court case collapsed, George cornered Callahan in a Liverpool nightclub and he launched a ferocious knife attack on him, stabbing him viciously multiple times, leaving Callahan crippled and living with a colostomy bag for the rest of his life. Now, George was known to never leave home without wearing body armour and without ever carrying a gun and a knife on him at all times. So it's clear that George Bromley was acutely aware of the dangers that could be awaiting him at any given time. He was very aware of the long list of enemies that he was accumulating throughout Liverpool's gangster underworld. But despite this, the way he carried himself was in a very cocky and self-assured way. Friends of his often said that he did carry a sort of air of invincibility about him, often proclaiming to people that nobody within Liverpool would ever dare take him out. Obviously, come November 1997, this proved not to be the case for George Bromley. And in what appears to be a strange, tragic twist of fate, George Bromley's son, who I think would have been an infant when George was killed, he grew up to be like his father. He grew up to be a doorman, a wannabe gangster, throwing his weight around. It was like he's trying to emulate his late gangster father in a way. But he came unstuck in 2017 when he crossed the wrong people and he was stabbed to death at, I think it was around 26 maybe. So he was killed younger than what his father was by trying to emulate his thug of a father. So, yeah, like father, like son, swings to mind. So there we have it, guys. A brand new video on Mob Talk UK to kick off the new year, to take us into 2025. The story of Liverpool bouncer and drug dealer, taxer, George Bromley. I hope you all enjoyed this episode, guys. If you haven't subscribed to the channel already, please do so. Would be greatly appreciated. And I'll see you all very soon for another episode on Mob Talk UK. Okay, guys, be safe. Take care. All the best.